Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Growth Chat by Mailmodo. Today we have a very interesting conversation on SEO and content marketing by none other than founder of Search Engine Journal himself. We have all grown up by learning SEO and content marketing from that website. And I'm very happy to have Lauren Becker on our chat today. I'm making adding him to stream. Hey Lauren,
Hey
welcome
Aki,
to
how's it going?
all good. How are you?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here this morning.
Yeah, welcome to Growth Chat by Mailmodo, and I'm very excited to have you here as well. I have been reading a lot of blog posts on Search Engine Journal to increase my knowledge of marketing and SEO as well. And I'm really pleased. I'm sure that all our audience is going to learn a lot from your experience. So
Great.
I will start with one question around how you started uh, into marketing. I saw that you started in 1999 when Google came into picture, and most of the world didn't even know about internet, right? And you started at that time into mostly into internet businesses and marketing. So how did that journey begin?
Yeah, it's been a long journey, and it's hard to believe it was so long ago. So in 1998, 1999, I was still a student at university. I was studying marketing, advertising, and PR, public relations. I noticed that the, there was no talk of the internet in any of the material that we were studying or any of the projects that we were working on. And it really grabbed my attention. As soon as I was able to log on to the internet, I was hooked, right? With all of the information that you could find, everything else. So I started implementing internet marketing into my projects as a student. And then um, when you're about to graduate, you have to figure out where you're going to work. So I went to the career center at my university, and there was a lot of applications for interning at larger advertising firms that did traditional advertising. There was one person who had their own internet marketing startup who was looking for an intern. I took that application. I got the job, and basically we were making it up as we went along. So I started doing a lot of digital advertising buys, banner ads, just really at the time calling websites like about.com or even Yahoo and negotiating ad buys throughout their networks, or even negotiating an advertising banner in the search results themselves. So one day, the person I was working for, she told me that she had sold an SEO package to one of her clients, but did not know how to do SEO. So she asked me to figure out how to do SEO. And I had done a little bit, and that became my focus. So I started doing SEO in terms of cleaning up websites, submitting to all the search engines at the time, such as Excite, Alta Vista, Lycos, etc. And then, as you said, Google was coming on the scene, and that really interested me because a lot of the search engines at the time, there was a pretty large technical component to ranking within them, but a lot of them were directory based. So they would cross-reference your directory listing with the information found on your site, right? And then Google had a linking component, and it seemed to be all tech based. So it really got me into marrying the mix of technical SEO, on-site content, which is really what I started with from an SEO perspective, categorical planning on websites, which we'll talk about. One way how we grew SEJ was making sure that we had nested topic structures and a sound category structure for Google. And then also the linking component, because I had started link building as a way to really market and build awareness of my clients at the time. And then Google came out saying that linking was important. So kept on building that up as well. And in that aspect, I got to utilize what I was learning in school in terms of marketing and advertising and public relations, but within the digital field. So, and a lot has changed since then. quite a bit has changed since then. But I think those core aspects of technical tech,
Hmm.
content, and
Hmm.
then PR or awareness building are
Hmm.
really still the fundamentals behind all SEO.
Hmm. Yeah. And so like you mentioned, like a lot has changed since actually when Google started and SEO started, and Google has updated its algorithm several times. And
Mhm.
earlier, probably putting a lot of links and a lot of keyword stuffing would work, but today that is not going to work. In today's world, what would you think that key components of building a blog or building a content engine and help making it rank, uh, and what would based on what should marketers do or
Well, I think one major change that's happened over the years that's a part of all of these algorithm updates
Hmm.
is really quality over quantity. So you kind of alluded to that a little bit with keyword stuffing, right? I was always against keyword stuffing. It's just I don't want to go to a site and see the same keyword over and over and over again everywhere. But you know, even in blogging, I'd say for the past decade, when blogging got popular,
Hmm.
lots of different sites were trying to write articles about everything, right?
Hmm.
So writing 20 different articles about email marketing
Hmm.
as opposed to writing one really in-depth studied piece about the
Hmm.
concept of email marketing, or
Hmm.
maybe about the concept of adding interactivity to email marketing, right?
Hmm.
So instead of trying to write all over the place with
Hmm.
no centralized hub, using that quality approach to put together a centralized hub, almost like you would in a research paper,
Hmm.
and then building from that. And constantly, one thing that's become really important in SEO, and I strive with all my clients and even publishers that I have relationships with, it is making sure that you're keeping that content up to date, right? Because not only does Google not necessarily value, so if you're linking to a citation
Hmm.
as a reference in a piece of content and that citation is from 2009, that's
Hmm.
very outdated information, right?
Hmm.
So just making sure that you're constantly keeping that content up to date that you invest in,
Hmm.
with that quality content, large pieces of well invested and well researched quality content, and constantly keeping that updated is going to help keep that at the top of the results. Because it's one thing to put
Hmm.
together a great article and it ranks at the top of Google for a year. But it's
Hmm.
another thing after that year when it starts to drop, and
Hmm.
identifying why it may drop. Maybe your competitors are doing better from a content perspective, right? Maybe they saw what you're doing and they're trying to copy you, or they're trying to do something better. It's constantly adding to that content. What I would also say is, we can always make our sites authoritative, right? From getting links, great PR, just
Hmm.
really building things from a branding perspective,
Hmm.
but always making sure that that content that you're publishing is the best content, and those top 10 results within Google is
Hmm.
going to help long term, because Google's going to want to serve the best content.
Hmm.
People are going to share inherently, they're going to share the best content.
Hmm.
And the better your content is, the more just like with Mailmodo in your email solution, the more interactivity you're going to see with great content on a web page,
Hmm.
really leads to all of those aspects that help with SEO at the end of the day.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, number one is like writing in-depth articles, uh, well-researched, usable content that people love and share. Second is like you need to have content refresh frequently so that your content are not outdated, your competition is not above you. And third is that you need to build authority around your topic, around your blog, right?
Right.
So what I have seen that many of the new businesses or new bloggers, they find it very difficult to build authority. They build good content, but it is not ranking because they don't have enough backlinks. They don't have enough authority. So, what are the some of the ways in which new bloggers and startups can bring good backlinks, can bring authority?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, just backing up a little bit, when I started Search Engine Journal, it was 2003. So,
Hmm,
it was during the infancy of blogging, right?
hmm, hmm,
People were launching blogs left and right. There was no social media at the time.
hmm,
So, if you had an interesting article
hmm,
and people wanted to share that article, they would write about it on their blog and link to it.
hmm,
Now it's as easy as someone hitting the share button, either on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever it may be,
hmm,
and not necessarily linking to you. So it's a little bit more difficult to get a link than it used to be. It used to be just, as I'm sure a lot of the publishers out there know,
hmm,
once you launch a blog and it starts to get traffic, you're going to be getting emails left and right from people asking you for links, right?
hmm,
So what I would highly recommend
hmm,
is, instead of trying to get links from everywhere, first do your foundational linking, right? Um, you know, there are directories out there that are very useful to get links in from a discovery perspective.
hmm,
There are a lot of different industry oriented directories as well, right? And local directories. So, for example, if you're a writer and publisher writing about, traveling to Florida or
hmm,
traveling to Goa or traveling to wherever, there's
hmm,
there's lots of different local sites and local directories that you can
hmm,
build relationships with, right?
hmm, hmm,
So it's contacting them to get your base in, right? You go to all of the different Florida travel blog directories or whatever it may be, just to really get that common denominator, that
hmm,
common ground with the others in the space. But then
hmm,
on top of that, I would say to really work on building relationships with a handful of sites, 10
hmm,
to 10 to 15 sites at a time. Build relationships with their authors. If they allow comments,
hmm,
leave a really impactful informational comment, right?
hmm,
Bloggers do read comments that are in depth. We don't read comments that say great article, I love this, whatever. But
hmm,
if you're adding to the piece or something like that, it's a great way to build a relationship with that publisher.
hmm,
Also interacting with that publisher within social media, right?
hmm,
Not asking for things all the time, but really building a relationship in the same way that you would build a relationship with someone in real life. So if I
hmm,
met you for the first time, Aki, like in a I don't know, a coffee house or a bar or something, I would not instantly, as soon as I'm introduced to you, I would not say, hey, will you pay for my coffee? Hey, will you buy me coffee? Will you give me a link to this? Will you give me a link to that? What I'm
hmm,
going to do is I'm going to
hmm,
build a true relationship first, right?
hmm,
As friends. And then down the road, maybe we can talk about, hey, how can we help each other? You know what I
hmm,
mean?
hmm,
So by focusing on, again, quality versus quantity, right? You can get your quantity and your common base doing what others are doing with directories, blog listings, things like that, right? But really looking at a handful of blogs to build relationships with and other publishers is a great way to perhaps do linking back and forth,
hmm,
to reference each other, and just really build that authority at the end of the day. And then
hmm,
you just grow from there. So one thing I did when I started SEJ was, it was very early in blogging, but
hmm,
I started reaching out to the other SEO bloggers, some
hmm,
who I knew through forums
hmm,
and email lists, but
hmm,
others were just popping up on the scene. So I
hmm,
would email them, tell them how much I love their blog. I would even link to them in my blog roll, which used to be a thing at the time. You'd have blog rolls on the sidebars of every blog.
hmm,
And typically we get a link back. But I think those relationships are really what helped to build SEJ, was
hmm,
just connecting with other similar publishers in your space. And then also one thing I'd like to add is that not all of those bloggers were SEO bloggers, because
hmm,
SEJ is SEO and SEO and PPC are two forms of search marketing, right?
yeah,
Which is under the digital marketing umbrella. So
hmm,
underneath that umbrella, there's also social media blogs, writing blogs, maybe email marketing blogs that are
hmm,
all looking for information on SEO. So my ability to be able to fulfill their needs and help them from an SEO perspective, writing about SEO, maybe on their site, doing guest contributing, which I also highly recommend.
mm,
And then vice versa was a way to do that. So
mm,
not only connecting with bloggers who are doing the same thing you're doing, but if you are doing maybe a travel blog on things to do in Florida, you may want to
mm,
approach some bloggers that write about Disney, or some bloggers that write about surfing, or some bloggers that write about whatever people do, and
mm.
make that connection that way as well.
Yeah, makes sense totally. So, the message for the new bloggers is that build real relationship with your other peers, other publishers in the category, and exchange backlinks, exchange links, recommend them, and help each other. That would be the
Yeah.
probably the message. So, Lauren, you mentioned that you started your blog as a personal blog in 2003, and now it has grew to 3 million monthly traffic, which is like massive, right? So, what are the few things that really worked, and there would be also few mistakes that you could have avoided and learned later on, right? Would you like to share some of the learnings of this journey with our audience?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, first of all, Search Engine Journal is going to be 19 years old this year, right? So there's a natural, when you dedicate 19 years into sharing information and building your brand and building that content, there's going to be growth, right? I would say though, when I first started, I was getting a handful of visitors a day. The first advertising I sold on Search Engine Journal was a $35 per month ad on the sidebar. I was so happy at the time. I could go out and buy
Mhm,
dinner. It was amazing.
mhm,
So, but I'd say our big turning point. There's probably two large turning points.
mhm,
One was when Search Engine Journal was just me in 2006.
mhm,
I started doing things like going to search conferences and speaking and things like that, and that actually helped the brand because it helped me because there was so many people that I met that were like, oh, your Search Engine Journal. Like I had no idea how impactful the publication was until I started talking to people, right?
mhm,
And that was really interesting, and that made me want to grow it from there. So getting that kind of feedback, covering live events, things like that really, really helped.
mhm,
Now, between 2010 and 2012, SEJ did not get the love and affection that it had had previously, or nowhere near that it has now.
mhm,
I had stepped away to focus more on the agency world and the agency life. We had
mhm,
brought on editors here, editors there. We were very open to letting almost anyone contribute a guest post at the time.
mhm,
And that was the mistake that we learned a lot from, because what happened was I would have people that had access to publish whatever they wanted, right? So I had people making controversial quotes that had nothing to do with SEO and
SEO.
political statements in their posts. We had a lot of links that people were placing in their posts for no reason whatsoever, right? It'd be a blog post about SEO, and there'd be a link on for like used cars or payday loans or something like that, right? So I really like clamping down and controlling the
Mhm,
user generated content that's part of SEJ was
mhm,
something that was a big deal. And then after 2012, pretty much 2012 to now, the focus has been on quality, again, quality over quantity. Because you think
yeah.
in about 2014, one thing that we did
Mhm,
was previously SEJ was set up like a typical WordPress blog. It was all
mhm,
of your categories and then individual posts, right?
mhm,
And the individual posts really didn't have much connection between them.
mhm,
So we embarked on really a recategorization and cleanup of Search Engine Journal that was done by multiple team members. And that
mhm,
was identifying the posts that we wanted to get rid of
mhm,
that had no value, that had no traffic, no inbound links,
mhm,
and either deleting them, no indexing them, or redirecting them to the most relevant posts that were getting traffic and links.
mhm,
We identified all of the links that we thought were shady, so to speak. So linking to places that they shouldn't have been. Maybe authors were slipping them in. Maybe people that had access to the site were slipping them in. Who knows? But we cleaned all of that up. And then it was refreshing. So it was identifying the articles that were getting traffic, that were getting whatever at one time, and refreshing them as well. And this was a very, very large endeavor because at the time, we were over 10 years old, right? 15 years old at the time. It was a lot of content to clean up. And part of that content cleanup was also the recategorization of the content. So we started doing topic hubs or topic clusters, I think is the word du jour. So what we were doing was looking at, instead of having a social media category or a link building category that just had a list of articles, the most recent articles, what we did was we started a link building and social media and SEO hub all about that topic. And then we found our most popular articles or articles that we had put into ebooks and things like that, and we nested them underneath those hubs. So the URL structures there are like searchenginejournal.com/social media/ the name of the article. So searchenginejournal.com/SEO guide or SEO 101 / name of the article. And by recategorizing all of that content, it made it very easy for Google to figure out what's important and what's less important, right? So basically, I mean, it sounds simple at the end of the day, but utilizing a solid hierarchical structure of topic hub / piece or topic hub / subcategory / piece in the URL structure, in the breadcrumb structure, in the schema markup, and then interlinking between those pieces as well, really told Google that, hey, look, you can take this part of the site and this is what's very important. You can take this and this is what's very important. And we saw the rankings for those pieces. And some of these pieces that we had written years before that were not getting that much traffic dramatically increase. And that was a huge turning point for us from an SEO perspective.
Yeah, that is a very interesting fact. Like you talked about clustering and creating topic hubs. A lot of startups, when they start just writing that, hey, we need to write blog, but they don't understand that, okay, they need to structure their content into one thread, one topic hub or one cluster. The topics generally, what I have seen on many startup blogs is can vary a lot, and probably that doesn't help them in ranking well. For somebody who has just started uh, writing blogs, what would be the steps to create these clusters? How do I identify which clusters I should write, or which topic I should bucket into one cluster?
Yeah. So there are various opinions on the matter. Here's the way I like doing it. One, your topic clusters or your categorization should mirror the same clusters or segmenting that the rest of your company utilizes. So if your website has a services and solutions dropdown, and those solutions are, let's just say, like, identity management, SSO login, whatever, by mirroring those similar solutions in your clustering, you're supporting the services that you're offering as a company, right? So that's really step one. Now, a company may also have different divisions. They also might have email segmenting. They may have all of other segmenting that follows those solutions as well. So making sure that is all together too, right? That's really step one, is figuring out what you do, why you do it, and then putting together those clusters. Also, by default in WordPress, category pages really have they really have no value at the end of the day, because it's just a list of links, right? But you do have the opportunity, because WordPress is open source and there's so many great templates out there, of developing a template for a category page that has content on it. So having that static, useful content that defines that page as being what it is about is very, very useful. Because by default, like, for example, if we have a category that's email marketing, it's just going to say email marketing at the top, and it's just going to be a list of whatever, right? But if I change that to email marketing, what is email marketing? Why is it important to your company? Everything else. And then I list the top featured posts about email marketing and then the stream of the most recent. That way, those featured posts, the ones that really get the most traffic, get the most links, drive the most leads or sales, or what you want to feature within those topic structures. So then we're essentially taking that category page by default and turning it into a topic hub by doing so, right? And I would also say that those blog posts that do drive the most traffic that you would feature on your category pages, also try to feature them on your blog homepage, throughout the site itself. Internal linking is extremely important in SEO, and it helps those posts that you've written may help to answer questions that your potential customers have along their journey as well. So there's more benefit to setting up these clusters other than SEO purposes as well. Give people what they want to find, give the bots what they want to find, and then everything is doable at the end of the day.
Yeah, interesting. Before I ask my next question, I will ask the audience to put their questions in the comment. We'll be taking the questions very soon. So, Lauren, you mentioned about inlinking, backlinking, and how does emails and newsletter uh, can be used to improve your SEO ranking? And I know that you have been doing that for a long time. So, can you throw some light there?
Yeah, I will. So around the same time, we started taking Search Engine Journal a little bit more seriously, which was around 2012. We also started taking, not seriously, but we wanted to grow substantially. We started taking email newsletters very seriously, right? Previously, our email newsletter was, I think it was powered by, it wasn't FeedBurner, it was another company, FeedBlitz, and FeedBlitz, and then Yahoo Mail. And both of those were just set up to be XML driven newsletters that would just send links to recent blog posts, right? But they had a following, so we moved all of that over to Aweber and then now MailChimp. The one thing that we discovered that I think is very important for all publishers and all companies that have emails lists is that you are going to have your email list, right? Is your owned audience, right? They're not an audience on Facebook. They're not an audience on Twitter. They're not an audience on LinkedIn. They're your audience, right? And within your audience, and we all know this preparing for next year or whenever Google takes away cookies within Chrome, the importance of first-party data, right? So within your audience, whether you're an SEO blog or a shoe blog or a music lesson site or whatever you may be, your audience is full of not only your customers and prospects, but also your brand advocates, also influencers, also bloggers, right? So I'm sure that every shoe blog out there has multiple shoe bloggers that get your email, or multiple people that are blogging and writing that get your email. So I would say that, making sure that when I see so many companies, especially Shopify-based direct-to-consumer companies, that are constantly blasting offers to their email base, their email list. Now, that's great if you want to try to drive sales, whatever it may be. One thing I've found with email marketing, not only on SEJ, but with other companies that I work with, is that it's nice to have an offer at the top, but then give them something else, because not everyone wants to buy, but they open the email. Now's your chance, right? So they've opened the email. They're reading that, hey, there's a 20% off thing. Well, I don't really want to buy anything right now. I don't really care about 20% off. I just bought a bunch of stuff last week.
Yeah.
But scroll, give them a survey, give them links to your blog posts, right? Give them other things to do that drive them back to your site or give you more information about them. The links to your blog posts can help from an SEO perspective because you may have influencers and bloggers that are within that group, right? And there's controlled SEO, and then there's uncontrolled SEO. So controlled SEO, controlled linking, is something like my company putting out a press release, or us emailing, those 10 to 15 bloggers that we had talked about with a news announcement asking the bloggers to write about it.
Mm.
Uncontrolled, unplanned aspect of SEO or linking is how many people within that email list may share that, other people see it, they read it, they're reading it within their Chrome browser. Chrome UX picks up a little bit of user information that's usable from an SEO perspective. How many of those people are going to maybe share or blog about that, or even get you a link from a place like, I don't know, Twitter or whatever, right? Which may not be a direct link that helps with SEO, but it helps build awareness, right? So that awareness all helps SEO at the end of the day. So what I would say is that if you are investing in a content strategy, that content strategy should not only exist in Google, right? Really leverage every other marketing channel that you have within your company. So the obvious one is social media, but the one that I think is overlooked the most is email. And email has really helped us by we'll see pickup of, first of all, we don't do any link building at Search Engine Journal, right? I like to say that our publish button, our link building tool is our publish button, because we publish it, people pick it up, they link to it, right? It's a great position to be in, and we're blessed to have it. However, that did not happen overnight. So pushing it out, getting it out there, right? Whether you're a blog or whether you're an e-commerce company, and getting that content in front of the people who would link to you, who would share it, who would do everything else is very important. And that's where we really see email come into play. And then also, obviously, from a targeting perspective, segmenting perspective, lookalike audiences, all of that with bridging into social media and bridging into advertising and other aspects.
Yeah, that's very interesting insight actually. And you mentioned about sending people different types of questions, asking them a survey. Have you created content using these surveys or asking questions to your audience?
Yes. So we have, and we've done this quite a bit. We usually do surveys on either Twitter, SurveyMonkey, LinkedIn, or whatever, but we have done email blasts around the survey. And what I'll tell you is that it's nice to send out an email around a survey, but typically what I see is that an email will have answer the question or answer the poll, option A, option B, option C. Those get a lot of engagement. But what I found gets the most engagement is click here to see the results, right? When someone clicks here to see the results and you drive them back to your site, you drive them to the page that has the results, and then there is like the information, the internal links, and getting them into everything. So interactivity is typically that first step. I mean, it just makes perfect sense, right? Interactivity is the step to more interactivity. So if someone's going to take the time, open the email, answer the survey, click to see the results, they're also probably going to spend more time on your site, reading about the study that you're putting together, reading about the results, putting together like blog posts that support that survey that you're doing. All of that is very instrumental to bringing that audience from their inboxes, that very intimate setting of their inboxes, back to the site. And then once they're on the site, they may buy, they may share, they may link, who knows? But just getting that in front of them is very important.
Yeah, that's a very interesting insight actually. And I have one question from the audience here. So Nilabja is asking, I will put it here. What is your perspective on choosing which things should be on your checklist for blog content upgrade? What are the benchmarks on the basis of which you prioritize them?
That's a really good question. So there's a couple of ways to prioritize changes for blog upgrades. The first way to prioritize is by identifying sites that used to drive traffic, blog posts that used to drive traffic that are seeing a drop in traffic. And that is you can do that very well and very easily within Google Search Console. So as you see blog posts kind of taper off, They may have the same impressions. So maybe it used to rank number 1, number 2, number 3 for a handful of terms. It might be on the first page still, but maybe it's dropped down to number 7, number 8, number 9. So it's not getting the traffic that it used to, but it's still getting the impressions. And you're seeing a drop in click-through percentage. So by identifying the posts that you're seeing a drop in click-through percentage, which is, the amount of impressions and the amount of clicks, you're seeing that something is dropping. And then really looking into it, why do you think it's dropping? So SemRush has a great tool. Their content audit tool, which it's not an end-all, be-all perfect solution, because I think at the end of the day, you need a human eye to go over this. But they identify the posts on your site that are more than 2 years old, that have had a loss in traffic or a low drop in traffic, and then you can cross-reference that information with your historical traffic to show what's dropped. And then also, typically what we'll find is something is a year or 2 years old, it's time to update it anyway. So that's where we will put together that list, and then we'll cross-reference. Here's how we choose like what has to be done first from a prioritization perspective. Pull the data on not only the traffic and the page views or clicks that you're getting from Google Analytics or Google Search Console, but also your inbound links to those articles, because those links that are pointing, maybe you've written one great article that's gotten a lot of links. So those are going to be your first priority to update or upgrade those posts, right? So cross-reference that where it used to rank, where you've seen drops with traffic and inbound links. Because the inbound links are important, because then you can also, while you're updating that post, you can link to your other important internal blog posts that you want to see rise as well, right? So by finding the posts that have the most links pointing to them, maybe through, Moz DA or Ahrefs DR or whatever it may be, you can then look for ways to redistribute that link equity to other pages or posts that you need on your site. Another way that I talked about this a little bit earlier is there's a concept with Google called EAT, right? Expertness, whatever, authoritativeness and trustworthiness, right?
Yeah, expertise, authority.
Expertise, and trustworthiness. So basically what that means is that, is the post written by an expert? Is it authoritative? And authoritative would mean well-researched. And is it trustworthy? Meaning, is there social proof or other inbound links from other trustworthy sites, et cetera, et cetera. So in order to keep that level of authority, you want to make sure any external sites that you're referencing or citing through your citations or your links are all updated as well. Like I said before, it's 2022. You don't want to link to a study that was published in 2009. It may sound new. It sounds new to me, but it could be a very, very old study, especially the way things are moving within the world right now. So prioritize and benchmark based upon traffic, links, and other metrics that are important to you, and identify what's dropped off and put those at the top of the list, and then look for opportunities to redistribute that wealth to the rest of your posts on your site too, or your money pages where you're actually selling or getting leads.
Yeah. So I have another question by Abhishek here. For demand generation, which tool or way is more effective in between content and email marketing? Which way tools comes after these two? Can you explain demand generation in detail?
Sure. So, we've talked today about content as in blogging, and email marketing is whatever you're sending to your email list, right? I'd say from a demand generation perspective, and one thing I haven't talked about yet that was a turning point at SEJ as well, is that once we started publishing and taking those blog posts and those ideas that we were putting together and publishing them into more refined resources such as ebooks, right? So, for example, if you've published, Aki, over at Mailmodo, if you've published 10 posts about how to get more more usage of your emails by utilizing surveys or polls,
mm,
take those 10 posts, look at opportunities to rewrite them into an ebook, right?
mm, mm,
That ebook put behind a lead gate. We do a
mm,
lot of this at SEJ. So our ebooks are behind a lead gate. And I haven't even gotten into what we do from a video perspective. So we do ebooks, we do ebooks Lite, we do
mm,
webinars, and we do a lot of other forms of content that are all behind lead gates. Those
mm,
lead gates, people basically have to put in their name, their email, a little bit about their company in order to access this free information, whether it's a webinar or downloading an ebook.
mm,
Then you get those leads coming in, but
mm,
you've nurtured that audience through the free front end content that you're publishing on your blog already, right?
yeah,
So those 10 posts that you've written about surveys and polls and how they increase interactivity and opens and clicks or whatever in your email campaigns,
mm,
by putting them into an ebook. If someone is reading another post on your site, if someone's reading a post on your site about how to get more interactivity in an email campaign, once they scroll to the bottom or run a full story or Google Analytics check on how far people are scrolling on these posts,
mm,
put a large call to action within that post. Hey, want to learn more about getting more interactivity around your emails and getting more opens? Click
mm,
here for this free ebook. You go to the ebook landing page, which is like on Unbounce or Instapages or whatever it may be integrated into your site, where people then fill in the lead information and get that. But that's a great way to marry demand generation with content marketing and email by doing so. And of course, you can email your entire list and let them know that, hey, this new ebook that we put together is free to
mm,
all of you for being incredible customers. We love you so much. Here is this free ebook. They have to, maybe they share it with their friends, whatever it may be. You're just getting more demand generation, more lead information from them. And then you
mm,
can also, in the same way that you can build relationships with other publishers, those publishers that you were talking to years ago about, those 10 to 15 publishers about getting links and things like that. Then
mm,
you can talk to them about distributing your ebook on your
mm.
landing page through their newsletters, right? Through their audience, and bringing that all back to you as well.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense actually. I'm putting another question here. So how to check the quality of content piece before publishing?
Hmm. Yeah, this is a really good question. So there are quite a bit of tools right now that are
Mm,
hitting the market that are
mm,
content brief tools, right?
mm,
So one of the defaults that most bloggers utilize from a content quality perspective when it comes to SEO would be
mm,
Yoast, the Yoast WordPress plugin, right?
yeah,
You can put in your core key terms that you're targeting into that piece within the blog backend, and it will
mm,
grade you and give recommendations or red, yellow, green about how your post is doing to meet that goal of hitting those keywords. And
mm,
that's basically the tip of the iceberg.
mm,
Also, SEMrush has a content brief tool as well that goes into a little bit more detail. So what
mm,
that does is it looks at the sites that are ranking in the top 10 of Google for
mm,
the query, that the
mm,
queries or topic that you're targeting, and it looks at their word count, how many times the terms appear on their pages, modifiers of the terms, and it kind of gives you a little bit more of a direction to go into, right?
mm,
And then there are some more advanced tools in the market, such
mm,
as Market Muse or ClearScope and many others that help
mm,
you build and manage much more refined content briefs. Because to the point of this question, if I have
mm,
a writer that's on my team and I'm just like, hey, writer, we need to rank for keyword research. Go write an article about keyword research, right? They're going to come back with something that they've kind of made up. Maybe they've looked at some other posts out there,
mm,
but a very unique to their experience writing of the post. If I can
mm,
go through and I can research and put together competitive analysis to see what's ranking and what they're doing, and say,
mm,
hey, writer, in order for us to also compete within this specific segment, we're going to need a little bit more here. We see that the grade level that's being written for on most of these sites is of a 6th grade level. We're going for a 9th grade level, whatever it
mm,
may be. And whatever those content brief tools have, I don't see them as being the complete answer to writing for
mm,
SEO. but I do see them as being kind of a guide or a North Star from a quality metric to own up to. I would also say having that extra level of an editor to review that writing before it gets published is very important. Writers are great, but if I don't ask me to proofread the same thing that I wrote, because I'm going to be very biased, and I may miss something like a spelling or a capitalization. It'd be really important at the end of the day, not just for Google, but also for your users, especially if they're picky about grammar and things like that. Right?
Yeah.
Who's going to buy from a company that can't spell the correct variation of there, and there, right? Or where, were, and whatnot. But if you have an editor that's going through that or utilizing a tool like Grammarly to make those changes before publishing, it can be quite important. And it could be the difference between someone making a decision to utilize your company or not.
Yeah. So we are running out of time, but we have few more questions here. These questions are very interesting. So, like, I see that you rank in a lot of Google feature snippet and Google Discovery. So, how to rank there?
Well, with Google featured snippets, I would say that being an authority site does help, right? But really looking into writing for answering questions with a little bit more than facts is very useful. And then answering questions, question, intro to the answer, and here are what we found, colon, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. The same writing. I will say that with featured snippets, Google changed the way everyone writes for the web. Because previously, if someone was writing an article before featured snippets, they would put the question and answer and facts typically within a paragraph, right? You would write that out in a paragraph. Then featured snippets started really shining a light on articles that were using scannability techniques. Question, answer, bullet points, question, answer, 1, 2, 3, question, answer, this and that. Utilizing tables to break out the facts, the HTML tables to break out the before and after and the facts and the data behind everything. By applying those techniques to our site, we started ranking for featured snippets almost instantly, because I think Google was already ranking us for those terms, but then we have this position 0 that was new. And we found that, Google was rewarding sites like HubSpot and others that were writing in that very bulleted, scannable technique that, sites like, Brian Clark at Copyblogger was introducing that technique years ago, right? So by writing more scannable, it's easier for Google to understand what the point is, and it's easier to feed the Google AI. But I also think that now, since Google has changed the way people write by rewarding that specific format, that now users expect that as well, right? Users expect those bulleted specific points that make it easier to figure things out. So I think it's a win across the board. Google Discover, however, is a whole different monster. With Google Discover, we were very early adopters of Google Newsstand, which has morphed into Publisher Center, and Google Newsstand was an Android-based news reading device or news reading app. A lot of that was integrated into Google Discover, it seems. And by making sure that a lot of what we do with Google Discover is not necessarily content optimization in the forms of written content, it's more so image optimization. So looking into Google Discover, what their recommendations are for hero images, what their recommendations are for this or for that are very important. And then SEJ was also one of the first sites within Google News, right? So we have a little bit of a head start on the news and Discover side of things, but we're always trying to tweak our approach to Discover, because if we hit an article on Google Discover, it can bring 50,000, 100,000 users in one day, right? And most of the time, those users, if it's SEO-oriented content or paid search-oriented content, they're very targeted. It's almost like we're getting on the start page or the dashboard or the homepage of all the people that we want to get in front of that day. News-oriented content, it's great to get the views. If it's something like, hey, how come my Facebook is down, right? And when Facebook goes down, you get a lot of traffic. That's good, but it's not really bringing in the leads and everything else that we need. But yeah, Google Discover is a lot of what we've been toying with, I would say, over the past couple of years. Sometimes we'll turn AMP on, sometimes off. We'll see how that affects Google Discover. Even before people started taking AMP away, we were running tests where we would keep a news post in AMP for 5 to 7 days and then take it out of AMP and see if that stuck with Discover, or see how that worked with the ranking. So my biggest recommendations would be to read the documentation that Google's put out about Google Discover, and also experiment with what you're publishing, the sizes of the images that you're utilizing, if Google's picking them up 100% for Google Discover or not, and then looking at what's peaked on your site with Google Discover in the past and finding learnings from those pieces and implementing them into your future pieces as well.
I have a very interesting next question asked by Maya. How do content marketers measure their impact of the content? So, in her words, is there a tangible way to measure the customer LTV based on the content that we publish?
To measure the customer lifetime value based on the content we publish?
Or basically the impact the content marketers make, the impact that one content bring to the company.
Yeah. So there's the traditional analytics KPIs, right, that are out there. And hi, Maya, how's it going? A different way to do that. There are intangibles out there, such as setting up either a Google alert or something similar to a Google alert to let you know when people are sharing your content, or when sites are sharing your content, or influential individuals are sharing your content. It's great to look at the sales and the traffic that have been generated via a content piece. That's fabulous, right? But and it's great to look at things like, how you're performing within Facebook, or making sure that you're sharing that content within your Facebook community or your email newsletters and everything else. But then also in terms of the intangibles, how are others sharing that content? Are you giving other people what they need to share that content? Also, one thing that if you can find people that are sharing your content, that are fans of your content or fans of your company, that's an intangible in its own, because that fan of the company, you can then maybe bring in, maybe you can ask them a question in the future. Maybe you can give them content to be able to share, something like that. So, one thing that we actively do at Search Engine Journal is that if we see that there's SEOs that are always sharing our material or commenting on our comments and things like that, we'll reach out to them when we're doing a piece that has lots of different questions, and ask them an answer to their question. And then using that on our site too. And then they'll go out, they see that they're on Search Engine Journal, so they're sharing it all over the place, right? So there's a lot of different ways that are kind of outside of analytics that really help to show success at the end of the day. Another is content syndication. So if you can partner with other sites that will publish your content, and then make sure that they're canonically back to you, or that they're putting on there, this is a piece that was originally written by so and so, you're getting in front of their audience as well. That's not necessarily something that you can track from an analytical value, but if you can work with other companies that hit the same target market as you do, or publications that hit the same target market as you do, but are not competitors, there are ways that you can trade that content back and forth. So you're getting your content in front of their audience, they're getting their content in front of your audience, et cetera, et cetera. So, but a lot of that really depends on the channel or the vertical that you're in, and the audience that you're targeting as well. If I'm targeting people that are between the ages of 18 and 25, they're going to be on completely different sites and social media tools than people that are between the ages of 45 and 60, right? So that for that younger generation, I may want to have something where I'm doing a video of me standing, like, how on TikTok there's the green screen app. So just the way in Aki, I see you're in this beautiful parlor, in this beautiful room with a piano and everything else, but I also think that's a little bit green screened, right? So you see this on TikTok all the time. There's people standing in front of an article talking about the article, and it's scrolling while they're talking about it. That's something that you can do with your content that there's not a tangible metric there, right? But it is repurposing that content in a way that's more friendly to that audience. Also, before getting on this show today, I shaved my head, and I belong to it's a service called Dollar Shave Club, where it basically costs $1 for each razor cartridge that you get, and they send it to your house every month. Every time they send those razors to your house every month, they have a little pamphlet or a flyer that has articles in it about different topics, and you kind of open it up and you can read this little book. A lot of those articles are also published on their website, but Dollar Shave Club is targeted to I guess an older generation, which is me, who may be used to reading a newspaper or a pamphlet or something like that. So by repurposing content to the audience that you're targeting, right? That's a great way to have brand success from a branding perspective. Just like this search engine journal cup, right? This is branding. Me holding this up, 2 or 3 people watching this video might come to the site, but at the end of the day, you're gonna remember that we're Search Engine Journal and not Search Engine Pamphlet or Search Engine Plot of Land or whatever. You're gonna remember that we're Search Engine Journal. So that's important. So I would say that utilizing content as a branding vehicle may not be as tangible from an analytics perspective, but it's incredibly tangible in terms of influence. So really go down that path to make sure that when you're delivering this content, you're delivering it in the mediums and the platforms that your target market is used to or that excites them.
Yeah. So we are already over time, but I will take one last question and then we'll go ahead from there. So how a new business can build an authority or on a specific topic that has already been crowded?
Great question. So again, you can only so many case studies can be relevant from a site like Search Engine Journal because it's been around for so long, right? However, if you look at other sites that have popped up or become popular in the world of search or SEO, in our vertical, there's a lot of noise. There's people publishing things every day. It's hard to stay on top of all the changes that are happening with Google. And to a degree, if you're a news site and you're covering a Google update, the Google update coverage on one site, it's not going to be really that different than the coverage on another site or another site, right? Now, what really helped me in the early days of Search Engine Journal was, unlike our competition. So after we launched, when I launched Search Engine Journal, there was a site called Search Engine Watch that was run by a journalist, Danny Sullivan. They left Search Engine Watch and they later started a blog called Search Engine Land. And then after that, now he's at Google. So Search Engine Watch, Search Engine Land, in the early days, they were written by, it was SEO news from a journalist, right? The different path that I took on Search Engine Journal was that I was already a marketer, a digital marketer, an SEO, a media buyer. So what I did that was different at the time was I would cover a news story, and then at the end of it, I would put in tips of why it's important and how you can integrate this new happening at Google or Yahoo or whatever it was at the time into your marketing strategy. That really helped differentiate SEJ from some of the other only news sites that were launching out there. And I think that's what really helped resonate with the audience of marketers was this is just not an article about Yahoo launching Yahoo Answers, but it's like how you can utilize Yahoo Answers as part of your SEO campaign. Now, there's a lot of content around that now, but there wasn't a lot of content around that back then. I would say if you're launching a blog now that's in a heavy space where you have a lot of competitors, look at what they're doing and look at how you can stand out, right? And for me, it was being myself, right? Which sounds silly and it sounds simple, but it was really a differentiation point at the end of the day. I was not a trained journalist. I did not hop over from writing on a tech site or a newspaper to starting a blog. I started a blog not too many years after being done with college. I had typos and things like that happening all the time. I utilized my own study skills. I utilized my own writing skills. I talked about I took it from the point of view as a marketer. So how can you do that, right?
Mm,
There are many different SEO blogs that are written by developers, or it's SEO from the viewpoint of a developer, which is
mm,
helpful to look at those studies and those articles for me to send to a development team and saying, hey, look, you can easily, here's an example of someone doing this, and this is why it's important for you. And when
mm,
they read that and it's coming from the viewpoint of a developer, they're like, oh, yeah, that is why
mm.
it's important. Oh, yeah, this is important at the end of it. This is important.
Yeah.
So I would say by being yourself, looking how to differentiate and not just repeating the same material that everyone else is, but
Mm,
perhaps covering it in a different way or just looking for something new and a different point of view is a great way to stick out and a great
mm,
way to develop a readership.
mm. Yeah. So thanks, Lauren, and thanks all the audience for all the questions. It was really interesting conversation with you, conversing with you, Lauren, and I'm I'm hoping that SCJ will grow much further from here, and you will keep imparting knowledge to the audience.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd also like to give a shout out to, I'd like to say that Search Engine Journal's growth to being a 3 million in traffic per month is not my work. It's the
Mm,
work of a team, right? So between our editor, Miranda Miller, Heather Campbell, Jessica Cromwell, our CEO, Janice Uehara, Brent Satoris, one of my other partners, and the rest of the team, they've really put in a lot of work
mm,
all over the globe, Vahan Petrosian, everybody, to make all of this happen. And as you grow, as you're growing your publication, right? So when I was getting 10,000, 20,000 views a day, whatever, that was fine. But
mm.
as you're growing from a publication standpoint, surround yourself with great people
Mm.
and great things will happen. So I just
Yeah,
wanted to give a shout
that
out to the team.
that's true for every team and every company. Actually, I will end the broadcast now. Thank you.
Thank you.